welcome back.
Welcome back after kind of a pretty entertaining day yesterday. I know I had kind of apologized for that. I'm not happy about the way the game went for Nebraska, and we'll talk about that here shortly. But here to break down Week 7, let you know what happened if you weren't really paying attention to yesterday's games.
Which I'm sure you were.
Sure, hopefully you were. I was trying to keep you updated, and then in the evening we had the Cubs playing, the Blues playing, and all hell breaking loose. So, let's first talk about Nebraska and their loss to Wisconsin. So, really just we had our hopes up.
Yeah, there was a lot of optimism going into the game.
Yeah, well, we talked about it last week a little bit how the week before Wisconsin, their game, I think Hornibrook was 11 of 20. So we had to focus on stopping the run. Force them to pass, stop the run. Guess what? We did a pretty damn good job of that in the first half. And really, the first half of the third quarter.
Right.
We did a really good job of that. And then the rest of the third quarter, the entire fourth quarter, we couldn't stop the run. They didn't have to pass. They didn't have to.
No, they didn't, and they didn't.
They had zero reason to pass the ball because they didn't have to. So, really, it was one of those things where I don't know the last time our rush defense was that bad.
It was bad.
It was pretty poor. Really, really hoping that never happens again. We gave up over 350 yards on the ground. I mean, that's not a Blackshirt defense.
No, not at all.
It really isn't. And then, we had our old 1997, 20-year anniversary of a 97 championship, and to really come out and say, the Blackshirts was the cornerstone of that defense, of that championship in the 90s. The championship in the 90s, it was really all Blackshirts.
Right.
And we came out and really just kind of shit it down our leg in that third and fourth quarter with the rush defense.
It was pretty bad.
Other than that, as far as positives from the game, I'll tell you what I saw on our defense, which we haven't seen over the last few weeks, was the gap coverage.
Right, they were up.
We weren't playing 7-8 yards off 99% of the time. We were up on the receivers because we know that wasn't their strong point. The strong point is not the passing game. So we rushed up on the receivers. We kept it close. We did some bump and cover, but we were able to play a solid game defensively for the entire, first almost three whole quarters, and then our offense did nothing.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it hurt right off the bat. A couple big plays early, and then third and 2 at the 17-yard line, and we do a swing pass for whatever reason. I don't necessarily think that Langsdorf's necessarily like the worst coordinator ever, but he's a really bad third down play caller.
He's awful. The
Really
third and short, the third and 2, 3, 4 yards. I mean, that's rush territory for Nebraska football. We have a fullback. How many times have we said we have a good fullback? Put him in.
Either give it to him or have him block.
Yeah. I mean, give him the chance to show what he can do. And when you don't give him the chance, the kid never gets a shot. But I guarantee he can make it happen. He's made some blocks this year. He's had some decent games, but we don't give him the ball, and we don't trust him to block in those short down situations. So we're not a pro team where we can always run a single back. Get a fullback in there that can help, and we just don't do that.
No, and so I mean that hurt early.
Well, and here's another thing on that pick six, third and 2. They're like, they practice a swing pass over and over again. They practiced a swing pass, and then they just didn't execute it. Well, the pass was awful. It was thrown behind Zigbo.
It was like above his head.
Yeah, I mean,
over here.
He's going this way, and he had to turn around and try to catch it here. I mean, that's not an easy catch. No. And, I mean, unfortunate bounce, of course. Very unfortunate bounce and went right into his hands, but that never should have been the play.
No.
Zigbo's in. Give him the ball. Give him the ball. And like you said, Langsdorf, no, he's not the worst offensive coordinator. But guess what? He is not good.
He's not good. And
he's proven time and time again, like you said, on the third down, the third and short especially, that he cannot make a good play call. And then when it is a good play call, we don't execute. So it's kind of it's twofold.
Right.
Our offense in the first half, 313 yards.
Yeah, I mean,
the second half, 68.
Zigbo rushed for 100 yards, and
Lee had 262 pass yards, I believe. Most of that in the first half. In the second half, we had a total of 68 yards in the second half. Okay, go. Go lay down. A total of 68 yards in the second half.
Yeah, they weren't on the. I mean, the defense was on the field the whole second half, and when we did get the ball, it went 3 and out.
Yeah.
Maybe get a first down and then punt. So yeah, it was pretty frustrating. You know, a lot of promise early, and especially after we got that pick 6 to tie the game in the third quarter.
Yep.
It was like, after that, it was like, I think we got this.
Well, and that pick 6 was, I mean, it was great read by Williams.
Mm-hmm.
He played on the receiver. He watched the quarterback. The quarterback actually didn't stare down the receiver.
No.
That was his second or third look.
Right.
And Williams was reading the quarterback the entire time. As soon as he saw him turn to his right, Williams made a beeline right towards where that pass was going to go, and he did a really good job playing it. And really, obviously pick 6, so couldn't have done it any better. And that gave a spark to the team. You just see the fans were into it; they were excited. And then it's just our offense just shut down. We ran obviously 313 yards in the first and 68 in the second. So our offense changed from half to half. I mean, those are the type. That's not when you make adjustments. Is when you're doing well.
Well, and they probably made some adjustments on defense.
Well, of course.
What just killed us is Wisconsin would get the ball and go on these 6-7 minute drives for 80 yards and score a touchdown.
They did what we used to be able to do.
Yep. And I still would be curious, just like the Northern Illinois game, if we don't throw a pick 6 on the first drive of the game, and we move down, we move the ball. I was a little bit, especially in the first half, I was impressed that we could move the ball on them.
Yeah.
Because they're supposed to be their strong suit is their defense. That's why they're ranked so high. That's why they're undefeated. And we were able to move the ball on them, so I was pretty impressed. Just once we got that pick 6 for the touchdown, it was just downhill.
Well, and once our offense kept going 3 and out after the 10-minute mark in the third, we couldn't do anything after that.
Yeah.
I mean, our offense just poor play calling, poor execution. We did have a couple drops by our receivers again. So not the first game that we've had some drops, but we got to clean up those. Those are the kind of games that those drops really hurt you.
Right.
We had some really good opportunities to move the ball, so it wasn't all Tanner Lee. I will say, I texted you yesterday after it happened. We get a good first down, a couple good first downs, and then we call a 50-yard pass.
Right.
I mean, and the announcers the whole time like, "Oh, he's going to sling it 55 yards." And I'm like,
the
who
announcer,
cares if
I don't know
it?
if people were watching it and listening to it, depending on where you're watching or whatever. But these announcers were all over Tanner Lee, but like they loved it.
They loved it.
They thought he was like the greatest thing ever.
Pro prospect.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. I thought he had a pretty good game. He had a pretty good first half.
First half, yeah. He was still 16 of 32, so
right.
he's only 50%.
Exactly. Just like Mike Riley, the 500 coach. Things don't change. So I thought he played pretty well in the first half, but it was just kind of interesting that they were just loving him.
Yeah. Oh, and since the beginning of the game, they were talking him up, but they really liked how he had a cannon. He's got an arm. And we know he's got an arm, but he doesn't have the accuracy like we thought he was going to have.
Well, and the one particular one you text me on, we threw deep. It was, we were building up for it, and it was the perfect time to do it. We just dropped it.
It was.
But then once we got down, he starts throwing long passes, and it's not our game plan.
Well, and I think if we've learned anything so far after the first 7 weeks of the season, is Tanner Lee is not a good passer inside the 10-yard line. That is definitely not, even in the red zone. It's the red zone in general. He's not a great passer, so you have to be creative in the red zone with him to have success. I think he could. I think he'd be very successful in the red zone, but we try to do these stupid swing passes. He has not made a good swing pass attempt this entire year. He's had 4 pick 6s thrown this year. I mean, that's the most in college football.
And he has the most interceptions.
Was it 10?
Yes.
Yeah, 10 interceptions. So, I mean, clean game for him other than that one pass. And we had 3 or 4 drops. I mean, we didn't have any other turnovers. So, offensively, we didn't make adjustments to their adjustments in the second half. And that's the difference between the current Nebraska team and the teams out there that are considered elite football teams right now. Is right. we make adjustments. But it's not always the right adjustments, or when another team makes adjustments, we don't make adjustments to our offense. So,
and I know the game was closer than the score, but and I know, and I commented on something about Riley smiling after the game.
I think Jimmy was having some drinks last night.
I was upset because
upset.
you just lost by 21 points at home to your division rival, pretty much.
Yep.
And the game was closer than that, obviously.
Yep.
But you're smiling on the field. I know that they did play pretty well for the first 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Just about. But I mean, when you lose a game by 21 points, aren't you upset? Like, I would not be smiling. Anytime I lose, I don't smile.
Well, it wasn't only 21. It's not the fact that we lost by 21 points. It's that 21 unanswered points. We didn't even. It's not like we competed.
Exactly.
After they went up and took the lead 24-7, we didn't compete after that. Our offense shut down.
We went down and we fought back, and then we went down again, and I feel like they just kind of gave up a little bit.
So our offense shuts down a little bit. Our defense couldn't get off the field.
The guy's smiling on the field when, that was a game that, could have saved his job. That was my biggest
So
thing.
I had, my buddy Steven was over last night, and I turned to him, I go, you know why he's smiling? He's like, what? I'm like, the dude just got a contract extension. If Nebraska fires him, guess what? He's still getting paid.
Yeah, he's going to get paid.
So let's talk about that real quick. If Riley continues to have the season we're having, we got Ohio State next, then we got Purdue, we got Northwestern. Purdue's actually had a decent year. Northwestern is going to be a tough team. We always play them tough, or they play us tough.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we got Iowa. We got some tough games
coming
on the road.
up.
And Penn State on the road. So, depending on how the season goes, do you think Riley's job is done after this season? What has to happen for him to save his job?
We needed to win yesterday to start with.
I think we have to beat a ranked team for him to save his job, in my mind.
Yeah. So, you're going to have to beat
Ohio State
or Penn State.
It's going to come down to those games. Now,
I don't know if it's going to happen.
Now, do I believe it's the right move to fire him? The only reason why I say no is because we have a lot of young talent.
Right.
He has a lot of good recruits.
Right.
We have a really good recruiting class coming in again over the next couple years. Projected right now is, granted nobody takes back their commit. But we have a really good class. He's been doing a really good job, him and his staff recruiting.
Right.
But what are we going to do with it? We have Diaco now as a defense coordinator. Mike Riley got rid of a bunch of guys last year. So we have all these new guys on the coaching staff that can maybe make a big difference over the next couple of years. So do we consider we're still rebuilding and Riley's a part of that?
And next year, I believe we have a pretty tough schedule. I think we play Ohio State and Michigan on the road, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
and we'll have
if we have, if we keep him around for another year, and then after that tough schedule, the same thing kind of happens.
Yeah.
It might be a little easier to let him go, or maybe he can.
My biggest thing is I can't remember who I was talking about, but you keep throwing these coaches at the problem, and then we don't give them enough time. Bo had plenty of time, but we're still paying Bo. Bo's making a lot of money. So he's getting paid by Youngstown State too. So
plus we're going to be paying Eichhorst.
Yeah, we're paying Eichhorst now. We're going to bring in a new AD paying him. So do you really want to get rid of a coach you just gave an extension to? He's going to probably retire. No one's going to pick him up as a coach.
Right.
And then keep paying him while he's retired, sitting on his butt at home, kind of laughing like, hey, thanks for all the money. And then bring in a new coach who hopefully can turn Mike Riley's recruits into solid athletes and good young men to play on the field. So, you got to look at both ways.
It's a tough spot, and hopefully the higher-ups know what they're doing, and they can get a good AD in here that can get things back on track.
Well, that's my thing. So you have boosters, you got people that are putting a lot of money in the university. They're not happy.
Right.
They're clearly not happy, and that has led to a lot of firings of coaches over the years across college football. Is the boosters and the alumni, the people, the board of regents, whatever, they have a lot of say in the coach and who gets hired, who gets fired, and it's a lot of pressure from the AD. They pressure the AD to look into that kind of stuff. So I don't know what the Nebraska Board of Regents and what the alumni, obviously they're not happy, but do they believe in Mike Riley? I think that's the biggest difference on whether he keeps his job or not after this year, is do they believe that his recruits, his coaches, the people that they have now because there's a lot of new coaches this year.
Yeah, and some of them are pretty good. I mean, some of them are up and coming, or
I think there's a lot to tell still, and it's hard. It's hard being such a hardcore fan for the Huskers and seeing us struggle this year. But seeing the talent on the field, on paper, the talent that we have on our team outweighs the talent on the Wisconsin team.
Yeah, we
just got our ass rolled.
We out-recruit them.
Plain and simple.
Every year, we always have more talent than they do.
Plain and simple, we got rolled. And Wisconsin's a good team. I don't want to take anything away from them. They're a good team. They moved up a couple spots to 7. It was a good quality win for them.
Really?
William disagrees. He's not happy about it either. But that's the thing. I mean, you can look at this as such a terrible loss, but you can also look at our opponent, and that's what Andrew was trying to say is, hey, Wisconsin's not a bad team.
I know. I got what he said.
But it sucks when you're so frustrated because we make it 17-17. We're making it a game. You get your hopes up, and then we just collapse.
Right, and I think what gets me, and I know a lot of other people, is just give us some passion somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't be smiling on the field after the game. Do something that your players, goes viral and inspires your players, or something,
Yeah. So anyway, I think we have such high hopes every year for the Huskers,
right.
And so it's not fun watching them play the way we did yesterday when we had everything going for us and going our way defensively, offensively, and then we just plundered. But I still think as fans, we're always going to be fans. We're going to cheer them on against Ohio State next week.
I mean, we're going to beat Ohio State this week. So
I mean, I called at the beginning of the year. I kind of retracted that statement.
You did say we were going to beat them.
And I still don't know if we're going to beat them or not. But I mean, Ohio they're playing for playoff. So I mean, they really are. So Nebraska next week is 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. We have to come in and really show them that. Hey, we can play with the big boys, and we didn't do it yesterday. Well, we did for 3 quarters.
We did it for a while.
And then gave up a couple TDs in the fourth. But keep your heads high, Husker fans. I mean, I'm an optimist. I still think we have a lot of talent, a lot of things to look forward to over the next couple of years. But
yeah, man, J.D. Spielman and Tyson Lindsay are going to be so.
Well, and Armstrong's a junior. Or Stanley Morgan, sorry. Stanley Morgan's a junior.
Right.
So, I mean, we still have Stanley Morgan coming back. I mean, we have a lot of talent on the field.
And I mean, Zigbo will be back next year too.
Yep. Bryant will still be there. Stanley.
Gosh, I said before the game, I think we would win this game if we had Trey Bryant. But honestly, Zigbo did more than enough.
Yeah, he was fine. I mean,
he had over 100 yards.
Our rush game wasn't the problem. Our offensive line's getting better.
They actually were. They were giving Tanner some time, which again I was a little surprised about because their defense was supposed to be so good.
Yeah. We opened some big holes for Zigbo to run through. So, I mean, overall, I'm disappointed in the game, but there was a lot of bright spots in the game, too, for our offense, a lot of bright spots for our defense. Kalu was back, playing well.
Yeah.
Williams had a really good game. Jones Lee Jr. had a really good game, number 6. He's playing really well. Didn't see as much of Weber and Gifford yesterday, but, being on the field so much, our defense just got worn out. So,
they did.
Go Huskers. I mean, we still love you. We're still going to cheer you on next week. Yesterday was not a fun loss for us. We hate losing to Wisconsin. And we lost at home, but I don't know. There's next week. We got more football.
We hate Ohio State, so let's crush that. No, let's see what we can do. Figure out a way to win one of these bigger games.
That's the thing. Just figure out a way to win. That's what we have to do. And go look at film, do what you have to do, and see what we can do against Ohio State. They have some weaknesses. We just have to be able to exploit them.
Yep.
All right, so that's all about Nebraska. Moving on. It was a tough loss, but we'll move on. We'll move on to next year and do what we can. Or next year, next week.
I mean,
I'm not moving on to next year. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but
let's
look at the top 10. So Alabama stays at number 1. They beat Texas A&M 27-19. So this game was actually a little lopsided for a while in favor of Alabama.
It was.
And then A&M got a safety on Alabama. They punted the ball, or I think they fumbled it because they were on the 15-yard line of Alabama. And the next thing I saw, I looked it up, the score and everything. It looks like Alabama had the ball on the 1, so it had to be a fumble or some sort of turnover because it wasn't a punt. So they got the ball on the 1-yard line. They got a safety, and I believe at that point it was 20-12. And so that made the game more interesting. So A&M got one more TD, so did Bama. Really not an impressive win. A&M's not a good team. They're not very.
I mean, they're what 4-1 or 5, maybe 4-1. Well, no, 4-2 now.
4-2.
They were 4-1 with that first week loss when they were up by like 30
Yeah.
points and they ended up
Yeah.
UCLA came back on. So I mean, not terrible, but
But
as far as SEC goes, they're probably better than some of those other teams.
yeah.
But
Here's the talk about Alabama. Here's what I keep hearing over and over again: is they are the best team in the country. They're elite.
Okay.
They're this. They're that. Guess what? They still don't have that great of a pass game. When you watch anything with Alabama in the pass game, you see Jalen Hurts. Not a lot of creativity from him, but their wide receivers getting open all the time. Their wide receivers are wide open. So I really hope a quarterback like Jalen Hurts can hit a wide open wide receiver.
Right.
I talked about that last week, but.
And Alabama never really needs it. They always
No.
have a good running game and a good defense, and that's
Yeah.
really what you need to win.
So
But-
they did what they had to do. So once again, right now, those teams in the top 10, they're focused on winning. If they win, chances are they're not going to move anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Plain and simple.
you can beat an unranked team, in a conference game on the road by 8 points, and it's still considered a decent win.
It's a win, and it's an SEC opponent, so they're playing a conference game. Clemson at number 2, they stay number 2. Those are really the only two teams that didn't move anywhere in the top 25. The rest of the top 25 moved except for our top 2 teams. So Clemson
and San Diego State.
San Diego State, yeah. I don't get that. We'll talk about that later too. So Clemson wins 28-14 over Wake. So once again, not really that impressive.
They were up. They scored 14 points like in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the game, and I thought they were gonna roll them up. Wake Forest was undefeated going into last week's game against Florida State.
I believe they were playing at Wake,
and they ended up losing a close one to Florida State last week, and come back with Clemson this week.
Yep.
Only losing by 14. Again, it's one of those things. Probably a decent team conference matchup on the road.
Yeah.
You win by 14 points.
Yeah, and Clemson's still looking
Take
strong.
it.
I mean, they still look good. Trey Bryant, or what's his name? Bryant.
Bryant, although I did hear
QB.
he was in a boot today.
Which Trey Bryant or
The
quarterback
the
for
quarterback
Clemson?
for Clemson.
Huh.
He hurt his ankle. Probably be fine. Probably be playing next week.
Depending on who their opponent is, he might not have to play. We'll see.
True.
Penn State beats Northwestern 31-7. This was a very, very, very slow game in the first half.
Oh yeah.
Very slow game in the first half. And
It
I
was
was
10-0 at half. I caught most of the first.
And really, the whole first quarter was very slow. The whole second quarter was slow. And Penn State over Northwestern. Northwestern at home. They came in and really they had one goal: shut down Barkley.
Right, and they did.
If you're gonna get beat,
Right off the bat, they did.
if you're gonna get beat, it's gonna be by McSorley and his arm and the
Right.
receivers. So they challenged both McSorley and Barkley on any sort of QB reads, QB sneaks, handoffs. They challenged everything that they could for that rush game. And holy cow, Northwestern, props to you guys. You did a fantastic job in that first half.
Yep.
Saquon Barkley, guess how many yards he had in the first half? Net. 0. And that's because he scored a 1-yard touchdown. He was negative 1 yards after like 10 carries, and then he had the 1-yard touchdown run to go to 0. It might have been 9 carries for 0 yards after the first half. So, but here's what he does. It does so well, which is why I still consider him a top Heisman candidate, is he's like a, what's his bugger from Stanford?
Christian McCaffrey.
He's like a McCaffrey, where if he's on the field, you have to know what he's doing.
And he catches a lot of balls out of the passing game.
So if he runs out of the pocket, or if he runs out and he's not blocking, you got to be careful because he could be thrown to. So they have to cover him on. They have to watch out for the rush. They have to watch out for the pass. So what does that do? That opens up McSorley to run the ball if he can,
Which he can.
but he can, yes, and he did yesterday. He did a pretty good job of it. Or throw the ball, find an open receiver, and they have some really good receivers on that Penn State offense. And in the second half, they really ran away with the game. That's when it all fell apart, or not fell apart for Northwestern. Really, 31-7. It may seem lopsided.
It was 31-0 too at one point. The big thing with Penn State is their defense.
Yeah.
They shut people down, and they're going to shut down. Man, they're going to shut when they play Michigan. They are going to shut them down because Michigan cannot score very many points.
No.
they're going to shut down everybody that they play.
Yeah.
So it definitely in the Big Ten.
Yeah, well, I think we've talked about it every year. So when you look at Penn State, you look at some of these other teams, even Alabama, Washington, and when they get to these conference games, you look at, is it really that quality of a win? You're playing Northwestern. Like, how good of a win is that? But here's the deal. When it comes to conference play, all those games are tough. It doesn't matter who you're playing. Like, that is some of the best competition you can face is when you're in conference play. And so, I mean, really, you look at a 31-7 win, that's a good win. That's 24 points, and you were up 31-0. So you might have had some second, third stringers in when they scored. Who knows? But Penn State, I'm sorry, you're at number 3 now. You have a lot of expectations after last year. After not being very good previous years, now you're one of those teams that everyone has to watch out for. And Barkley and McSorley are the cornerstone of that offense to get it done.
However
they're exciting to watch.
However they turn this around, send that mojo over to us, because I don't know how you did that.
Yeah.
I don't know how they turned that program around so fast.
Yeah. Well, and really, Penn State they are, as much as people want to argue it, they're an elite team.
They are.
Last year they were, this year they were. They're that close to getting themselves in position to win a championship. And I mean, kudos to the coaching staff, kudos to the recruiting team. They've done fantastic. Barkley's fun to watch. McSorley's a great quarterback. They got great wideouts. They got a great defense. Yep. They're doing everything they do to stay in that top 5. And guess what? I don't think they're going anywhere.
Nope.
So Penn State stays number 3 after a win.
The only way they're going anywhere is up if one of those teams ahead of them stumbles.
And that's what happens. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. Number 4, Georgia. Georgia moves up to number 4. They beat Vanderbilt 45-14. They played at Vandy. Here's the funny thing. Vandy last week got beat by Alabama.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And what did they do before that game? They talked a lot of trash and said, hey, you're coming to our house now, we're going to beat you. And Alabama just rolled them. Ole Miss didn't say anything, and Alabama rolled them. So it's like, what? Can we talk trash? Like, what do we have to do? Is it respectful trash talking to our opponent? They didn't say, I don't think they said anything about Georgia. Georgia came in and just really rolled them. Nick Chubb, fantastic game again. Actually, I want to put him on my Heisman list because I think he should be considered right now in the Heisman race.
Fromm, their backup quarterback. Yeah. That I mean, when they get Eason back, I don't even know that he's going to play because I think Fromm's. Why mess with what they got going on?
That's going to be a hard decision to make because they're both good, but like you said, why mess up something good? You're in the top 4 right now.
I wouldn't
putting yourself in the driver's seat. You are putting yourself right where you need to be to win the SEC.
The only way that you make a change is if you're down by double digits in the second half.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and one thing that we didn't mention, sorry, real quick, was we got our first taste of Patrick O'Brien last night.
We did.
And I mean, it was at a time that didn't really matter.
He was 2 of 3.
Yeah, just a side note.
Yeah, I did think it was funny. Wisconsin brought in their backup quarterback just to take a knee.
Yeah.
That's all he did. I mean, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. But I hope the kid was like 100 pounds. I mean, he looked like he was about 12 years old. But anyways, so Georgia wins. Georgia in the SEC right now, I mean, having a fantastic year. At the beginning last year, they had 4 wins. 4 or 5 wins last year. They might have been 8-4 with a bowl loss. Did they have 8 wins last year?
Georgia?
I don't know. I didn't think they had a good year. We can look it up later.
Yeah.
But I didn't think they were going to be that good this year.
They were maybe like an 8-4 team, but 7-5.
Well, maybe I'm thinking of LSU because they're off.
Yeah.
All right, Washington, they roll Cal. It was 38-7. Cal, really, I mean, they haven't showed up this year. They've had a couple close games, but they're not.
I think they beat like North Carolina and Ole Miss in non-conference play, but those teams aren't very good this year.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you saw the Peterson, the coach for Washington.
Yeah.
He's not very happy because they're playing at 10:45 Eastern every week. So no one, on the East Coast, and I mean, a lot of people people that are big fans in the Midwest, and are gonna stay up and watch if it's a close game and it's a good game, or 2 top 25 teams. But when I see a Washington Cal, I mean, I wasn't gonna stay up and watch that game. So I understand he's a little frustrated. He said they don't play a game before 5 o'clock.
No.
Like any time.
You know, it's
and that's what happens when you're ranked up there pretty high.
It sucks and unfortunate, but guess what? It's not like they're not getting any love for what they've done.
Exactly.
They're ranked number 5. I mean,
they are.
But that happened last year. They were mad about it last year too, about not getting the primetime games on national television. And I mean, I'm sorry, you're in a situation where on the West Coast,
just go win your games.
Yeah, just win and keep winning. Browning is having a hell of a good year again.
I hope that Washington and Washington State are undefeated when they play each other. That would be great.
Yeah, it really would. I mean,
Washington, what's that, the Apple Cup or something like that.
And so Washington's having a good year. They're ranked number 5, and they're playing well. They just need to keep winning games and know what they're doing.
Yep.
Ooh, excuse me. Number 6 this week is Washington TCU. So TCU beat West Virginia. West Virginia was ranked as well.
It was a pretty good game. I watched towards the end.
It was 31-24, so they win by a touchdown. Once again, right now you're looking at wins. You're not looking at the quality of win. Depending on what happens elsewhere in the top 10, top 15, the quality of win does not matter right now. Exactly. A win's a win. TCU has been winning. They've been winning big. West Virginia, a ranked opponent in the Big 12.
Right.
That's all that matters. They beat a ranked opponent in their own conference, and they beat them by a touchdown.
And they were up by a couple touchdowns. West Virginia scored 2 touchdowns real quick and tied it back up. They kind of went back and forth, and TCU just it was one of those games where they had the ball for a majority of the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game, ran the clock down, was able to punch it in and hold them off. Yep. I don't know if I can say that a Big 12 team is going to make the playoff. I just think that somebody's going to end up beating them. If it is going to be somebody, it probably would be TCU. I mean, they're the only undefeated team left.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I think they still have to play Texas. They still have to play Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're going to be able to make it through. And Tech's ranked now.
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll see.
It'll be interesting. Wisconsin, obviously, they beat Nebraska 38-17, so they move up 2 spots to number 7. We'll talk about why people are moving up 2 spots instead of just 1. We're getting there. Don't worry, guys, for all of you hanging on the edge of your seat. Washington State ended up winning 33-10 over Oregon. Pretty solid win. Oregon, they don't have their starting QB anymore this year.
Yeah, but they always have,
But once again, it's a Pac-12 opponent.
Skilled guys.
Yep.
So, that's a big win.
Washington State needs to keep doing what they're doing as well. They win 33-10. Ohio State beats Maryland 62-14. Now, that game was actually pretty damn close for most of the first half. And then, really, Ohio State ran away with it. So, and I will say, not only were the refs awful in the Nebraska game, missed a lot of really obvious holds. When Tanner Lee gave up himself, the guy comes in head high. He was clearly going down. He came in at his head. They didn't call anything there. A lot of holes. There was a pass interference call that they clearly missed as well in the Nebraska game. But the rest were just as awful in the Ohio State game. I watched a majority of that first half, and I swear just about every play there was a hold, and they really missed an opportunity to call some penalties during that game. And it was, I don't know, just maybe that's just me hating Ohio State, but I saw some stuff that could have been called. So they win 62-14. Not really a close game for Maryland. Auburn 44-23 over Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not your year. I'm sorry, you suck again.
Oh, they're bad.
You're awful.
Auburn getting into the top 10, I think is correct. Mm-hmm. I think they had what was it, like a 14-7 loss to Clemson, or 14-6 loss to Clemson. So they're a one-loss team, but
Stidham is one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now. He's having a hell of a good year for Auburn. After they turned that's what I was thinking. Auburn and LSU had terrible seasons last year. Georgia did not, but Auburn and LSU did. Auburn, I thought, was way overrated at the beginning of the year. They have proven themselves so far this year in the SEC that they are not an overrated team, and that's the goal they set out to make this year. Is we're not overrated.
So last week, I believe you mentioned something about Alabama and Georgia playing a couple weeks out.
Yep.
They actually do not play each other in the regular season, which makes it even better if you ask me. Because then, if both those teams can, make it to the end, or maybe Auburn upsets
Auburn.
Alabama.
Look out, last
Iron
game
Bowl.
of the year, Iron Bowl.
And they slide into, it's an Auburn versus Georgia type
That could be kind of
SEC
fun.
championship. Which
That could be actually a really good game.
Yeah, I think so. I actually am kind of hoping for that. But, no, I think Auburn being in the top 10 is just fine. I don't like the SEC that much, but the teams that are up there deserve it because the rest of their conference isn't very good.
Yep. So let's take a look at the losses yesterday. Some of the big losses, and we'll talk about a couple big wins too. So let's start with the losses. So Oklahoma lost to Iowa State,
Right.
at home, as the number 3 team to a 2-2 Iowa State Big 12 opponent
After a bye week.
after a bye week, and they lost by a touchdown.
They had a bye week. Those guys must have just been thinking like, oh, we got 2 bye weeks before we play Texas.
If they would have watched anything on Iowa State before that game, I mentioned the week before, Iowa State's not a bad team.
The problem is, Iowa State's quarterback dipped out real quick for personal health reasons. So I mean, they technically didn't really have film to watch on a backup quarterback.
That was a third string quarterback.
Yeah.
That wasn't even their backup. That was a third string. So yeah, you don't have film, but you still have.
I know.
It's the team itself.
That's pretty bad, and
So losing that 2-2 Iowa State. I mean, Iowa State hadn't had a win like that in so freaking long.
they usually, for whatever reason, end up upsetting somebody. But not a number 3 team on the road.
They always
after a
have
bye week.
they always have a good Big 12 win at least once a year. But this year, Iowa State's they're now 3-2.
I'm curious to see how they end up shaking out in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Because normally Iowa State is bottom of the Big 12.
Yeah,
Maybe
and-
not last in the Big 12, but they're towards the bottom in the Big 12.
And they're 3-2 right now.
And now, I mean, this season probably Baylor is the worst team in the Big 12.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's a lot of like decent teams. So we'll see where Iowa State ends up shaking out.
Oklahoma drops 9 spots. I personally, yes, I don't like Oklahoma, but you lose to a 2-2 Big 12 opponent in your house after a bye week. To me, that puts a lot of weight on that loss, and you should at least drop outside the top 15.
Right.
But here's the thing. Here's why they didn't, in my opinion. I don't like it. I still think they should have dropped outside the top 15, but they have a win against Ohio State.
Exactly.
So their one win is against a team that is back in the top 10 in Ohio State. It's a quality win. They beat them when they were number 2. They beat them on the road at Ohio State. So that's why they probably only dropped 9. I mean, it is what it is. I think Oklahoma has no chance of getting in the playoffs. I know some people disagree with that. They think Baker Mayfield is still the best quarterback in the country.
ESPN definitely disagrees with you.
Oh yeah, they still. Joe Klatt, you ever watch his show? Joe Klatt still thinks Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback in the country. He drools over him. Here's the thing about the Heisman. If you want to talk about Heisman for a second, if we're on the subject, the Heisman is not about the best player in college football. You have to look at the character of the person as well, and that's what the Heisman has been missing for quite some time.
Yep.
They don't look at the character. You look at somebody who got arrested in the offseason for public intoxication, tried to flee from police, lied to police, and blew a blood alcohol content over the legal limit. So, I mean, you look at someone like that, yeah, it's a mistake, but is that really your Heisman winner? A mistake's a mistake. Well, and look at his attitude. I mean, the guy's clearly a cocky son of a bitch, if you will. I can't stand Baker Mayfield. And I did love. You see, Iowa went and took that flag.
Iowa State went and stuck the flag in.
The flag, and that was just a nail in the coffin for him.
That was pretty good.
William agrees. He thought that was pretty funny as he eats his sock over here. But really, I mean, Baker Mayfield, he's still a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. But when you look at the Heisman, I do not think he's the best quarterback. I can name on my list right now. I got 3 quarterbacks who I think are better than him for the Heisman. So we'll talk about that in a little bit as well.
Okay.
So Oklahoma loses. They drop to 12. Michigan lost to Michigan State at home at the Big House. This is the first time. Yeah, first time these teams have played at the Big House at night against each other.
What?
Yeah. They have
Yeah.
never played each other at night at the Big House.
Huh.
So, yeah, pretty crazy. But Michigan, I mean, that was very low offensive production. Once again, you talked about Michigan; they're not going to put up a lot of points.
Well, and I mean, their starting quarterback was out. He's got like some broken vertebrae or whatever.
They still don't put up a lot of points. I mean,
but
they didn't last year.
regardless. But yeah, 14-10. I wasn't expecting that to be super high scoring, but
No.
I thought it might be a little more than that. But good. I mean, good win for Michigan State.
Great.
They're,
I mean,
they're
really,
having
yeah.
a pretty decent season.
Yeah, so I mean, Michigan loses. They drop 10 spots from 7 to 17. So once again, Michigan hasn't had a quality win this year. They really haven't played a ton of games.
I mean, they played Florida the first week, but now we see Florida's not
Florida's
really
not even
that
top
good.
25.
They're
So
not even top 25.
Florida, I didn't think it was good at the beginning of the season. Once again, a ranked team that probably shouldn't have been ranked, in my opinion. But it's SEC. We'll let that one go. But yeah, really, Michigan State. It's always a good game to watch. I think it lived up to expectations yesterday, even though it was low scoring. Yeah, the defense is playing well. There were some good plays on the offensive side of the ball as well. All right, so the teams that moved up. Notre Dame. Tim and Pooty, listen up. Now, we can start talking about Notre Dame as a quality team. Here's
Think so?
why. And here's the reason why. They beat North Carolina, which to me is not a huge win. It's a 33-10 win. They beat them well. With their backup quarterback,
Yeah.
redshirt freshman backup quarterback, solid.
Yeah, and I mean, North Carolina's now 1-5 or whatever. But
Yeah.
no, I mean that's fine. Just like you said, at this point,
Go.
At this point, a win is a win. Now with Notre Dame, it is a little different because it's not a conference win.
And they don't have a conference.
Because they're not in a conference. You don't have the opportunity to play for a conference championship at the end of the season.
Yep.
Now, what's fortunate for them right now is most, if not all, of their remaining games are against teams that are ranked right now.
Yeah.
They have a bye week, then they play USC, which that's right there is pretty good. They have a bye week before USC. They play NC State. They play Navy. They play, and I don't know, maybe they have Army, so maybe they don't have, or did they already play Army?
I don't believe so.
I'm
Let's
not
see.
entirely sure. I think you got to click right.
There we go.
But they play Stanford, who's
There
ranked
it is.
now.
Yeah, they got USC next week. NC
Oh, okay,
State.
sorry, they play Wake Forest.
So USC is ranked 13th. NC State's number 20. And then they got Wake. Miami's ranked 11. Navy's in the top 25.
And Stanford.
So their one
Yeah.
opponent not in the top 25 is Wake Forest.
Who's actually not having a terrible season. So, now, are all these teams going to be ranked when they play them? That's maybe a different story.
Yeah.
If Stanford loses another game, they might not be in there. If Navy slips up,
Yeah.
if NC State loses this over the next 2 weeks,
The-
something like that. But I mean, they definitely have a shot. They're going to need a lot of help.
Well, they don't have a shot at the championship this year. They don't have a shot at the playoff. There's going to have to, a lot of teams are going to have to lose for them to have a shot. And here's why, because Georgia's going to stay there. So, I mean, the biggest thing is Notre Dame, you're not in a conference, which hurts you. But with all your opponents, if they stay ranked in the top 25, that will strengthen. Not only you might get up in the top 10, but you have to win those games. You really have to win those games, and it really could be. Really, the ball's in your court, on your field, whatever. It really is in your hands right now. The fate of Notre Dame this year is in your hands. It's in the hands of Wimbush. It's in the hands of Book. Really, those two quarterbacks right now. I mean, do we have both quarterbacks are good. What's going to happen if Wimbush is healthy next year? I mean, you had the Kaiser and what's his bucket debacle over the last couple of years. Who do you play? Did you make the right decision? Who knows? Do you want to have a quarterback controversy again this year after yesterday? Yes, it was North Carolina, but I mean,
we'll see.
I don't know. Book had a good game, and so did Adams. Adams,
he's good.
He's having a very good game. He might even be in the Heisman talk if Notre Dame keeps winning like they are.
Yeah, he's one of the top rushers in the country. I mean, as far as playoff goes, not having a conference championship,
You have to go undefeated.
I think you almost do, just because when it comes down to it at the end of the year, they weigh a conference champion so heavily.
They do. And it's been talked about since the playoff began.
You would almost have to. They would have, probably had to have beaten Georgia and then went out and then, have Georgia win the SEC, have Michigan State win the Big Ten, have Miami or somebody win the ACC for them to make it in. But I don't know. We'll see. A lot of teams lose.
They got a lot of things going for them right now because you had Georgia. They're up in the top 4 now.
And you lost by 1 point.
And you lost by 1 point to them on a last play. And then you also have Michigan State, who now beat a top 10 team, and you beat them pretty good. So
and they're ranked now.
So Pooty, I'm not going to apologize for saying that the Michigan State win wasn't a good win. I think Michigan's overrated and has since the beginning of the season. I thought they were overrated last year, but now that what happened yesterday, we can say it's a quality win because they beat a top 10 team, so that helps. It doesn't matter. You're going on a backup quarterback. That doesn't matter for the rankings. But Notre Dame moved up to 16. They moved up 5 spots more than any other team.
Yeah, they jumped in more than anybody else did.
Not counting some of the unranked teams. So Notre Dame, it's really up to you on what you're going to do the rest of the year. You have a lot of ranked opponents coming up. If they stay ranked, who knows? You might end up in the top 8 at the end of the season if you keep playing the way you are. So, but a lot of good things looking to next year for Notre Dame. NC State, they move up 4. So I'm a little confused by this. So NC State beat Louisville, and they beat them 39-25, so by 2 scores. Last year's Heisman winner shut him down for the most part. NC State played a solid game on Thursday night. They ended up winning. They're undefeated in the ACC, I believe.
Yeah, their only loss was they lost to South Carolina the first week of the season.
So they're 4-1.
Loss,
and I mentioned with Georgia Tech too. Both teams were 2-0 in the ACC. Now I don't know what Georgia Tech did, but we know that now NC State is 3-0 in the ACC. So look out for potential ACC champion in NC State.
Okay.
Potential. I said potential.
You're right.
We'll just talk about that again here in a second. But NC State wins. They move up 4 to number 20. San Diego State slaughtered UNLV, and they stuck at 19. They didn't move at all. So, I don't know. I guess I'm still trying to figure out how they do these rankings. We have some undefeated teams that are playing really well. South Florida, Central Florida, San Diego State, that are still outside the top 15, and they're getting no love, probably because they're opponents. But
right.
Once again, you look at some of the opponents of the top conference, the top 5 conferences, like in Oklahoma losing to Iowa State. I mean, they only moved down 9 spots, but you got another team that's undefeated and winning all these good games. They're not moving up, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that
they're not playoff teams.
Those teams, I don't think could ever make the playoff unless you were a Houston from last year that beat Oklahoma, but then didn't end up winning that conference, or ended up losing a couple of games, whatever. Yeah, I mean, whoever they always go to the New Year's Six Bowl. Yeah, just whoever the highest is. But I don't think any of those teams could ever make the playoff.
No. All right, let's talk playoff.
Okay.
So we have a couple early predictions. Now these are going to change, but right now, if we had to think who's going to make the playoff, who would we say is going to be that team to make the playoff? So I went ahead and went first when we were talking and wrote my teams down, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but once again, this is early on predictions for what I've seen and what I see from each conference.
Maybe a little bit of hope.
And definitely some hope. Definitely, there's a lot of hope in this. Part of it is because there's
maybe
some
teams, a little hate.
Yes, maybe a little hate. There's some teams that I don't want in there, and there's some teams. But I'm putting these teams in there because I do think they have a legitimate shot at winning their conference and being in the playoff, considering where they're at currently.
Right.
So, first and foremost in the SEC, I have Georgia.
Okay.
With the way Georgia's playing, the way Nick Chubb is running. Offensively, defensively, both sides of the field, they are a solid team all around. Georgia, I think, is better than Alabama. Maybe not defensively, but I think they have a good enough offense where they're not going to run into problems. Now, they are a rush offense. Nick Chubb is very good. We've seen good running backs get shut down by Alabama. So it's going to be up to Georgia. Once they get to that point, if they stay undefeated and end up meeting them in the SEC Championship, what's going to happen?
Okay.
So I got Georgia. In the Big Ten, I got Penn State. Talked about them earlier. I don't think Penn State's going to falter. I think they're going to keep moving around. I think they're going to win, win. I just don't think they're going to lose. I think they have a strong enough team. I believe they play Ohio State.
Well, I mean, they play Ohio State and Michigan.
And Michigan, once again, I think Michigan's overrated. I think Ohio State, a good team, but I think Penn State's defense is really strong. And I think Barkley, we've seen Ohio State give up a lot of pass yards and a lot of rush yards. So I think they still have a lot to prove on their season. I have a Big 12 team getting in, and it's TCU. Once again, this is going to be tough. TCU and the Big 12 in general, they always beat up on each other.
But they have a conference championship this year.
They do. So I see TCU as a front runner. Oklahoma State, I don't see either of them getting in. But if between those two teams, I would see Oklahoma State over Oklahoma winning the Big 12. But if that happens, I don't see the Big 12 getting in.
I almost want to change one of my picks, but we'll get there.
Okay, so I got TCU. And the last one, now don't laugh. The last one is an ACC team, and I got NC State in there. They have one loss right now, but they have been playing quality football all year long, and I think they have a good shot to win the ACC because Clemson, I've seen some good things from them, but I've seen some bad things from them.
And NC State should have beat them last year.
They should have. So I've seen a lot of things early on this year from NC State that makes me think that they have an outside chance to get into that playoff, but they have to win the ACC, and they obviously cannot lose another game. They already
have a loss.
So that loss does not help them, but winning the ACC could be really good.
It was a 7-point loss against South Carolina in the first week, so as we've seen in the past, that
first week sometimes doesn't matter.
Yeah, that can be forgiven. So, okay.
All right, Jimmy's 4.
Okay, so in no particular order, was yours in order or was it just...
Nope. Okay. No, mine wasn't in any order. That's just in general, the 4 teams. First and foremost, I will go with Penn State. I think that they're going to win out. And, even if for whatever reason they slipped up in one of those games, I think they're still going to win the Big Ten. So I think that they're going to make it in. Okay.
I do think Clemson will. I think with some of these games, that they don't win by a lot. They might be playing down a little bit to their competition, whatever. They did beat Auburn. They did beat Louisville. They did beat Virginia Tech. So I think that they're going to end up making it. Not that I wouldn't be upset if they didn't. But yeah, so then I did have Alabama. I don't like Alabama. I'd rather have Georgia. But the only thing is, I think if they get to that point where Alabama's won and they're undefeated in the SEC championship and Georgia's undefeated and they're in the SEC championship, I don't want one of them to... I don't want Georgia to beat Alabama and have them both make it in. It's
possible.
Which is what they're predicting to have.
It's very possible.
Yes, and I don't want that. So, but I do think Alabama is going to win the SEC and that they will make it in. I hope that they don't, though. And lastly, I think Washington. They went there last year, and like I said earlier, I would love for them and Washington State to both be undefeated when they play each other. Washington State almost has an out. They have a chance there too. When I said I wanted to change my pick, I had kind of forgotten that Big 12 had a championship game.
Yeah.
So I might go back to my preseason pick and say that Oklahoma State's gonna do it.
Okay.
So that's my 5, if you will.
I like it. I mean, it's going to be tough because you have a lot of good games coming up, and these conference games are going to get tough. You got a lot of good teams, not a lot of good teams in all conferences, but right now in the top 10, you got in the SEC, you got Bama, you got Georgia, and you got Auburn. In the Big 10, you got Penn State, you got Wisconsin, you got Ohio State. In the Pac-12, you got Washington State. I mean. And then you got
TCU in the Big 12.
And then you got the ACC in Clemson, and you got TCU in the Big 12. So we have a lot of conferences that are really strong this year.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 and the Big 12, in recent years, especially when the playoffs started,
one of them gets left out.
They get left out because they beat up on each other.
Yep.
They might have a really good Stanford team But guess what? They're going to go in and they're going to lose the USC.
Yep.
You got a really good USC team. They're going to lose to Washington. They're going to lose to Oregon. I mean, these teams just are going to beat up on each other. So that's why it was really hard for me to even think about a Pac-12 team in there, and that's why I stuck the ACC and NC State in there. I think the Pac-12, the Big 12, it's going to happen like it has in previous years. We're going to beat up on each other, and they're not going to get in.
Okay.
It'll be fun though. Now that Nebraska is way out of it, I think I can actually enjoy the season a little more in general because college football. I think there's so many good teams, so many good players out there to get excited about. Especially some of our Heisman candidates. I think there's a lot of guys out there now. I put down like 5 guys. Okay. There's probably more than that. I know one for sure I left off the list. Maybe 2. One I don't like though. I guess you can probably guess who that is. My number 1, you look at what happened to Jackson last year. He had a stellar first half, and then he got shut down in the second half, threw a lot of picks, didn't get a lot of rush yards. He still had a really good season, but after the first 6 games, he really just got shut down.
After the first 6 games, he had the Heisman Trophy locked up.
He did. I mean, everyone was
with
like,
his
give it to
stats.
him. And you look at Barkley. So I got Barkley as a top candidate right now.
Yeah.
He's the number 1 in my.
I think everybody does.
I think not only because of his skill, his versatility. He's able to play. He's throwing a ball. He can catch it. He can run it. His yards are not outstanding. He doesn't have a lot of rush yards. He doesn't have a lot of receiving yards. He has 1 passing TD. I mean, he's not a guy who's going to stand out because he's a team player. He doesn't need the ball every play. Jackson last year for Louisville, he had to be the guy that made plays. No one else was going to make them.
That's true.
So he was the one and only guy to make those yards. He wasn't throwing it to himself, but he had to run the ball as much as he did. He had to throw the ball as much as he did because he was really the only guy that could make plays on the team.
Right.
But I got Barkley as number 1. I think he's the best player in college football, all-around athlete, and he's a good guy.
Yeah.
He is a great young gentleman who has a lot of promise ahead of him. I got Mason Rudolph in there. Mason Rudolph, yes, Oklahoma State has a loss, but Mason Rudolph is still one of the best quarterbacks in the country. On the flip side of that, people are going to say Baker Mayfield's the best quarterback in the country. I can highly disagree with that, not only from his athleticism. Yes, he's a good quarterback. He's not the best in the country. Rudolph, I think, is better. I think Jake Browning is better. I think Stidham from Auburn is a hell of a lot better. J.T. Barrett, don't even get me on him. Some people still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Yes, he's putting up a lot of yards, but that's because his receivers are running at like 80 yards when he passes the ball. So don't let that get you mixed up in the head. But Mason Rudolph, I got him in there. I got Nick Chubb as a running back. Nick Chubb is in there. Like I said, Stidham. I got Browning in there from Washington.
Even that Love dude from the running back from Stanford. He's leading the country.
Stanford running back. I mean, Stanford really turned it around this year. They had a couple losses, but right now they are playing their best football going into conference play. And they could be a team to look out for to ruin some teams in the Pac-12 because their playoff chances are 0.
Yeah, with 2 losses, I don't think you can make the playoff.
And then you look at Sam Darnold from USC. I wouldn't count him as a great quarterback, but he's good. He's got a lot of skill, a lot of talent.
Right.
He reads the field really well, and that, to me, that is one thing that is pretty exciting to watch for USC fans, is to see Darnold play the way he is. They still have a lot to do this year, a lot of good games ahead of them. But Darnold, I think, deserves some talk.
But as a team that's in the top 10 now.
Yeah, Darnold deserves some talk for Heisman. And this year's going to be tough for any Heisman voters on who they're going to put in there. Right now, you can say Barkley's number 1, but if you look at stats, if you look at all the good players across college football, you could have probably 8 or 9, 10 guys in there that you could talk about right now.
Yep.
And Adams from Notre Dame. You could probably throw him in there.
Yeah, Josh Adams.
The guy's running the ball like crazy.
His average is probably top 3 in the country per game.
Easy. So, I mean, how do you not put him in the talk of a Heisman when he's playing as well as he is?
It's true.
So, tough decision for those Heisman voters. We still have a long ways to go for the Heisman. We still have a long ways to go for the playoff. Long ways to go the rest of the season. We're only halfway through. We got some good
Yeah,
football
yeah,
left to play.
Yeah.
Good football left to play. One thing we didn't look at, we
Was
didn't
this
talk
week,
about.
and I know I looked.
That's right. Here we go.
I don't know that there's any top 25 matchups this week.
Let's see what we got.
Yeah, that'll be a better way to look at it.
Let's see
I
what we got next
I don't
week.
think there was any. Because, yeah, the game day is going to James Madison.
Yeah, which is surprising because we got Texas
We did
and
look.
Oklahoma.
Texas, Oklahoma is this week. Now, that probably would have been game day if Oklahoma would have won.
Ooh, here's another one I want to talk about: Michigan, Indiana.
Actually, that could be pretty interesting.
Michigan. So Indiana put up a lot of points yesterday. Had a really good game. You got Sammy
They scored
Cobbs.
some points.
Sammy Cobbs is having a hell of a good year. They got a decent quarterback and a pretty good defense. I think I'm going to pick that as my upset next week. I think Michigan's going to lose again, and they're going to lose to Indiana. It's at Indiana. Michigan's coming off a loss. Not a good loss either, technically, because it was unranked Michigan State.
Right.
That could be a good game to watch. So that's next week. That's an 11 o'clock game in Indiana.
I got one interesting one.
Okay.
Right there. Purdue at Wisconsin.
Yes.
Purdue has been playing pretty solid this year. Wisconsin had to battle for the first three quarters of the game last night.
They did.
I don't necessarily think Purdue's going to win, but watch out for it.
Here's another one: Georgia Tech, Miami. So I said Georgia Tech. They're undefeated. They had a bye week. They're undefeated in the ACC. They're 2-0. They're 3-1.
Bye week before Miami.
Coming off a bye week into Miami.
Miami had a tough game.
I still think Miami's
State.
overrated. I still think they're not
Me
that
too.
great
They
of a
just
team.
haven't played that many games, unfortunately.
They've only played 4 games.
And it took till 6 seconds left in the game for them to beat Florida State, and it was like a 3-3 game for a long time.
Florida State's not very good.
So yeah,
that could be a good one to watch out for. So knock off the ACC opponent, Georgia Tech. We'll see what Miami does in that game. It's at Miami, so Oklahoma's going to Texas. Oklahoma.
yeah. No, they played at the Cotton Bowl.
Oh, sorry, they're playing.
They always do that.
They're playing in Dallas, so they're going to Texas,
Right.
the state of Texas.
Right.
Playing at the Cotton Bowl. Oklahoma, Texas. Texas has really turned their season around.
Yeah.
They're 3-2, but they're 2-0 in the Big 12. Guess what? Oklahoma 1-1 in the Big 12. So that's a pretty good game. Once again, you're looking at Big 12 championship.
It's the Red River Rivalry.
Red River Rivalry.
If we can say that.
Say that 10 times fast. But this is a huge game for Texas. You're looking at potential for Big 12.
Oh, yeah.
Big 12 championship. Texas could still win the Big 12. They might not go into a playoff, but Texas is playing for the Big 12 right now.
Yeah.
They're not playing for a playoff. They're
Exactly.
playing for the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
And by God, would they love to be back up there in talks for a Big 12 championship. It's been a while. So Texas, Oklahoma, that's another game to watch out for. That's your 2:30 game. So if you're watching at 11 o'clock, stay tuned. That one's on
ESPN.
That's on ESPN. So
I'm surprised it's not on ABC, but
yeah. Let's see. Central Florida, they're doing really well in the American Conference. They're 2-0.
Frost.
Scott Frost is kicking ass there, so they put up like 63 points this last week.
yes, they did.
Let's see.
We obviously play Ohio State.
Nebraska plays Ohio State. By God, I hope we don't get our ass kicked like last time when we played them. Utah at USC. Now, this is an interesting game as well.
Utah lost late last night to Stanford by 3, which...
But Stanford's on top of their game right now.
That's true. Watch out, USC. Utah's not bad. They're
really not.
pretty good.
Utah's been good over the last few years.
Yeah, they have.
So for USC to go to play at home, I think that's going to be a big difference for them. But they can't underestimate their opponent in Utah.
What time is that game at?
That's at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So they really can't underestimate their opponent because Utah's going to come in. Once again, Utah, they're 4-1. They're 1-1 in the Pac-12. Their playoff hopes are shot after losing to Stanford, but they still have a chance at the Pac-12. They beat USC. I mean, really, USC's chance at the Pac-12 might be shot. Definitely out of the playoff race. They already are, but...
they're sitting at 13 with one loss to a top 10 team. We'll see. I don't think they're...
They got two Pac-12 teams ahead of them,
I
so...
don't think they're going to win out.
No. Michigan State, Minnesota. Michigan State should roll Minnesota. Minnesota's not very good. Oregon, Stanford. I mean, that could be a pretty good game. A 4-2 team against 4-2. The 1-2 in the Pac-12 for Oregon, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's it. I mean,
That's it.
that's why game day is going to James Madison. That was no, that's actually going on.
Yeah.
They just showed it
So,
as postponed. Because
yeah.
of some,
So the Georgia Tech Miami was the game that was postponed earlier in the year due to the hurricane.
Yeah.
So that's a game that should have been played already, but now they're going to play it this week.
Yeah.
So a lot of good things to look forward to. I think this is going to be a fun week next week. I think we have a lot of decisions to make in the upcoming weeks as far as who's who.
So does the playoff rankings, does this come out after the 8th week?
Week 8.
Okay.
Yep. So we got a couple more
yeah,
weeks to really see.
Yeah, 2 more weeks.
How close are we? I mean, what do we think? Obviously, we're not experts. We have a lot of opinions. We like to believe we're pretty darn good. Just so you guys know, that's the second missed extra point for Mason Crosby in the Cowboy game. So go big boys in blue. But I mean, really, a lot can be decided over the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of good games, a lot of big games for some of these teams that are in the top 10. They got some big games coming up that it could decide their fate for a playoff.
Well, and just like we saw Oklahoma slip up against, a lesser opponent.
Yeah.
Looking forward
After a bye week.
Looking ahead to the next week, maybe when they got Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the next one to slip up like that? Does somebody come in and beat a TCU? Does somebody come in and knock off a Washington?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We'll just have to see. At this point, a win's a win. You win by a point, you take it. I'm sure Oklahoma would.
Doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile.
Yep, they would.
Win's a win.
They would like to take that game back and win by a point. They would. So.
All right. Well, I think that's all we got today.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you did tune in, we didn't have a ton of viewers so far, but hope you guys watch the video later and enjoy the show. I mean, I think a lot of good things to come. We're looking forward to keep bringing you all of our insight and what we think.
Absolutely.
We'll continue to do that until we die.
Yeah, I would think so. Hopefully we can win a national championship during that point.
Cheers.
Yep.
All right, man. I'm Matt.
I'm Jimmy.
We're two average guys, and that's just our opinion. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Beat those Buckeyes.
Beat those Buckeyes.
Walking my voice down, know the words I speak,